It's like they're trying to be too meta.
You're gonna make them an offer they can't refuse.
Yeah. You can buy you a drink.
Well, I mean, he did pick out somebody we know.
You sidestep the question. That technology does not exist.
Hi everyone, you're listening to A to Z, episode number 4. Our guest this episode is Army combat veteran Josh Briggs. Josh served at the height of Operation Iraqi Freedom. We talked about the challenges he faced both on and off the battlefield.
Hello, listeners. I'm Zach, and I'm with my co-host Aaron here. Welcome to A to Z. If this is your first time listening, thanks for checking us out. A to Z is produced weekly, and show notes can be found at a2zpodcast.com. That's A2Z podcast.com. If you like what you hear, feel free to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcast fix. And you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at A2ZBMT. Aaron, what do you think of this episode? Do you like it?
I had a lot of fun.
It was a rhetorical question.
Yeah, it was. Well, it's more important than having a lot of fun with this episode. I usually say that, but this episode to me is quite important. Yeah, we touched on some really heavy themes, so hopefully you won't get too fatigued.
Right. I mean, we delved into his serving and everything he did in the Army, but we also got into the effects of what happened whenever he got back.
Right.
And, talked about, addiction and PTSD and trauma and how he dealt with
anxiety,
it and his story. And Josh is just a great dude. He's a lot of fun. Even though we did touch on those sad subjects, we definitely had a good time with him. We had a great talk.
Yeah, he did a good job of making it light. So
right, yeah.
taking really heavy subject matter and lighting it up.
Thankful for all of it.
Yeah, that's him in a nutshell.
This should be a good listen. Support your veterans, and we talk a lot about how you can help and support others, and maybe open your eyes to some things that they're going through with the VA. But if you like what you hear, subscribe, leave reviews and comments. We definitely love to hear your feedback, and enjoy this episode with Army combat vet Josh Briggs.
It's wonderful. Metaphor. Every girl has loved it.
Too strong a metaphor.
Yeah. Never had anybody complain.
Well,
They love it.
So welcome to the studio.
Thanks, bud.
Good buddy Josh Briggs is.
He's a good friend of the show. He works with me on the food truck. Every now and then we have a big event or something. We'll get Josh to come on. Over the past couple of years working, he has never-ending stories. He never runs out of stories. He's awesome. He's going to talk to us about being in the Army, if that was a good or bad thing, everything that's happened after that. We're probably going to get off on a bunch of tangents, goof around a little bit,
And I've never considered myself to be a storyteller, but I get feedback from people sometimes, and they tell me they're like, you can really paint a picture and kind of set a tone and.
Well, you have a natural way about telling a story. We'll be on the food truck goofing around, and things just turn into stories, and they're so captivating because of the way you tell them.
Well, and what's strange is if I try to sit down and I were to try to do some stand up, because a lot of pretty comical stuff has happened to me in my life.
People probably ask you to do stand up too.
So many. I mean, and I know that's a cliche. You should do stand up, but people have told me that, and it's something I love to do. I got to do 5 minutes at the Pine Theater when I was in the 6th grade.
Yeah.
While we were waiting, I freestyled. I killed it.
You were definitely the class clown, weren't you?
Class clown.
Well, it's probably just because you have such an immense amount of stories to tell. Eh?
Well, when I was young, I was I really craved attention. I really craved the spotlight, and I could make anybody laugh, and that was part of the people pleaser in me. But I mean, I was always quick with a joke and very quick witted, and people responded to that. And I've always treated everyone the exact same. Pauper to prince, it doesn't matter. We're all human beings, and you get the same amount of respect. And you never know when you're going to need somebody in your life. And it's that one person that you pick on that when you're 25, they're the ones that is doing your passport. And guess who's not going to Cancun? Because you pulled his pants down in front of... No. But, just little crazy stuff like that. You never know how things are going to come back in the future, or how something's going to affect you.
I bet that type of personality got you in a lot of trouble when you were a kid, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Class clown.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, yeah, and I had to have a lot of parent-teacher conferences, and they would say he does the work, and he's bored, and he doesn't suffer. It's everyone around him suffers, and they fell on the test, but he aces all the tests and just cuts jokes. And she's like, he's hilarious. He distracts me and I laugh. And this is the teacher saying that. And yeah, it's always kind of been like that.
Yeah.
I really did have kind of a Wade Wilson sense of humor, like even in the face of great adversity and death, I still, was quick with a joke. And morale is so important. It's crucial. Morale wins wars, with inferior numbers and equipment. Morale wins wars. It's won wars throughout history. The power of people and what we can do when we really push ourselves, because our limits are extreme.
When did you sign up?
I was 17 when I signed up. It was my senior year. It's December 22nd, 2002. I'll never forget it. And I don't know what
This was right after. So let's paint a picture. So this is 2002. This is right after 9/11.
Yeah, 9/11 was very fresh.
This was the peak of the Iraq War. This was also a time in our country where everyone was being overly patriotic.
A lot of patriotism,
Freedom fries was a
fuck yeah,
thing.
America. Yeah, we
Let's
were
go over
all
there and
about
get
it.
revenge.
But so I signed up while I was still in high school. So I was in the DEP programs, delayed entry program, and I did not realize until recently, actually, the amount of love that my mother had for me to knowingly let me do that. I mean, I'll never forget, she looked me in the eyes and she said, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" And she started crying, but she signed the papers because I wasn't 18. So she had to sign a waiver for me to join. But
She didn't try to talk you out of it or anything, huh?
She said, "If this is what you want to do, I support you."
Well, I asked that because you were just talking about how you were kind of a class clown. I'm just kind of. There's not like a specific person that signs up out of high school or anything, but I was just trying to get an idea, I guess, the kind of person you were and what was it like a group of people?
Actually,
or
I can tell you what got me into it. When I was 5-6 years old, I started going to the deer lease with my grandfather every year, and we were really close because I'm the only boy in the family. So we spent a lot of time together, and he taught me how to deer hunt, and I was a natural at it. I mean, the first time I ever shot a deer, I dropped a deer on the spot, and my grandfather couldn't believe it. He said that I just was so calm and my breathing never changed, and I've always been able to kind of dissociate from it in the moment, almost like an unreality, and really fine tune the precision.
Task, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I can really tune it in, and adrenaline is such a powerful thing. I mean, when it dumps, your cortisol's released and your muscles tighten and your hands shake and all these other different things start happening in your body that really affect you.
A lot of hormones are released.
I'm able to put myself out of the space and look at it differently. Like some people, when things pop off, they don't remember anything, and it was just all this anarchy and craziness, and then it was over. But for me, things would slow down, and that's when I was really able to hone in.
Did you realize that was like a talent of yours before you signed up?
Yeah, because I deer hunted with my grandfather, and then I joined the Boy Scouts, and I started going to Camp Erlin every year, and started winning the Boy Scout shooting competitions every year.
Yeah, see, I guess that would be an important thing that we probably should have said from the beginning, is that you were in the Army as a marksman.
Sharpshooter, yeah. And it was just something that I've always had a knack for. My grandfather, when I was a kid, when he was finished with a beer can, I had a little BB gun, and he'd throw his beer cans up in the air and see if I could shoot them. And so I was always raised around guns and raised to respect guns and not be afraid of them. Because if you're knowledgeable and it is a great tool and it is a great weapon,
and a great danger,
and a great danger in the wrong hands, and ignorant, irresponsible hands, it can cause severe damage and irreversible damage. Once you pull that trigger, you can't take a bullet back. wherever it ends up is where it ends up, and you gotta take that.
So you knew you were a crack shot going in. Was that something that you told your recruiters, or was that something that they kind of picked up on in your training?
No, they didn't know. They actually kind of try to trick you, because I told her basically kind of the same story. You know, you take the ASVAB before you go in, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery.
We probably all took it. You probably took it, right?
Yeah, I took it in the 10th grade, and I took it to get out of an English test.
Exactly. I took it because if you did, you could skip like the first 2 periods.
Yeah, because it's long, and it's a time test.
Yeah, I don't think
and
you're going to take that.
It's over.
You don't have to take
several. You know, there's a vast number of categories.
That's the test they use.
There's 4 categories. I think there's a science, mechanical aptitude, language, and
it's a lot of different stuff, but it's really random, weird questions.
Well, that's the one they use to kind of narrow down.
Right.
It's basically their aptitude test. Yeah.
That test is designed to see how your brain functions, where you kind of fall in, and they go by different scores. Your GT score, I don't know exactly what it measures, but from the people I've met in my experience and the people I've seen, it's pretty close to an IQ, basically. So, like, I wanted to be a sharpshooter. Well, in order to do that, you have to sign up to be infantry. You don't just sign up to be 11 Bravo. 11 Bravo is a direct line infantryman, just a grunt. You're grunt. That's the guy's front line, you know, they're fighting.
Yeah.
But then you have an 11 Charlie, which is an indirect fire infantryman, which is a mortarman.
Support
and
kind of position.
Well, and yes and no, because light mortarmen carry 60s, and they're right in the middle of it because they can direct lay and fire off of walls with mortars. 60 millimeter mortar system. Okay. It's very lightweight. It's very versatile. It's light infantry means they typically will be paratroopers, and they will parachute in with all their equipment, and they make long ground movements. And then you have mechanized units, which I was in 3rd Infantry Division, which those are mechanized, are tanks, you know, heavy armor.
It's like a mortar on a trailer kind of thing.
Well,
right?
and mortar tracks are terrifying. I mean, you're riding around in this little steel box, and you carry 72 120 millimeter mortars inside this with you that are on either side of you.
72 bombs.
That have a kill radius of 75 meters, you know, around. It's insane. But it's not only that. We have high explosive. We have white phosphorus. We have aluminum rounds and all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, you wouldn't even be a greasy spot on the road if we got hit with an IED. So it was terrifying when we had to ride around in that.
So you had those levels, and you had to sign up to be infantry. But
I kind of
did you just just hope that they saw your skill and you got the job?
Well, I didn't know at the time, so I signed up infantry, and I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, I'm gonna be a sniper. But you don't decide what type of infantryman you are. They go by your GT scores, and infantrymen that typically have higher GT scores, they put in as 11 Charlies because there's a lot of math involved with running a mortar system. And
it's trigonometry.
And it's all trajectory, and you have to be able to pump out these 4-digit numbers quick for deflection and elevation.
And especially at that time,
to put these rounds down range.
You're going to have to elaborate because I'm a layman. I don't really know, so I'm kind of asking you. But especially in the time you were serving, right, in the Iraq War, when it was...
it was during the invasion.
It's an invasion.
And there was still weapons of mass destruction, we think.
We think
there's warehouses full.
Exactly. And there's also a lot of civilians around because it is an invasion. And your math had to be 100% accurate every single time, right?
Well,
I don't think they're probably as focused as that. Just from the numbers,
no,
right?
you have.
I know the snipers are.
You have a 4-track gun line. So you have 4 mortars, 4 tracks. In that track, you have a gunner, an assistant gunner, a driver, and a TC. Your TC is your highest ranking non-enlisted guy. He's in charge of that. So your base gun, that's like your fastest gun. The guy that's a mortar system is actually pretty hard to run because we fire 120 millimeter mortar rounds out of the back of a track. So 4 tracks pull up all.
So a track's not quite a tank, but
it's
bigger than a truck.
It
with
looks like an
tracks.
amphibious vehicle
Okay.
with tracks on it.
Yeah.
Nothing flashy. It's got like a 50 cal on top for the TC, but the hatches on top open. They butterfly open, and then the back hatch comes down. So 4 tracks all pull up on line at the same time. The section sergeant will run 100 meters out, and he has an aiming circle, and he lays in all of those mortar guns so that all the mortar guns are firing exactly on at the same target, all in line.
Yeah.
So while he's doing that, you have the assistant gunner who runs 2 aiming poles, one at 50, one at 100 meters, and sets those, and the mortar gunner has a sight that has bubbles on it like a level, and it has lines and everything, and you'll get a 4-digit deflection, which is your, left and right cantation, and then you'll get an elevation, which is a 4-digit number that runs up and down. And you can either have a big shift change where you have to unlock the whole turntable and shift the entire mortar gun system around, and it's a lot of training, and it's a lot of craziness.
So how many people are on a crew on each track?
You got 4. I'd say 4 guys
4 people
in
per
a track. Yeah, it's usually a 25 to 30 man platoon because you got a PL, LT. You always have an officer and a non-commissioned officer that run a platoon. Usually sergeant first class E7 and a butter bar first lieutenant. But the scouts and medics and all the supporting guys were all in headquarters and headquarters company. That's all your specialists. Medics, mortars, scouts, snipers, your biological guy, all your S shops, all those guys all are in headquarters company. So being a mortarman, I was already in headquarters company. And in the infantry, you have to qualify on your weapon every 6 months. You have to be proficient because, you have to be war ready. And the rest of the Army doesn't focus much on that because they have actual jobs they do. Mm-hmm. A dental hygienist doesn't need to worry about being an expert marksman because they don't fire a weapon.
Right.
So we had to do a lot of that, and I had to run a lot of ranges and coach a lot of people on how to fire. It's always been so hard for me to understand how bad some people are at firing a weapon because it's always come so easy to me. Yeah. Everybody has perspective like that. There's stuff Aaron can do, that I can, and vice versa. The way they tested our platoon to see who was going to be the sniper spotter was we did a battle shoot. And that consists of you being in full battle rattle, which means you have helmet, body armor, full magazines, 7 magazine minimum. I always carried 14 because I got in a bad situation, but I'll tell you about that later if we have time. Your Molly pack, everything. You have everything. You got about 100 pounds of stuff with you. And you do a 10-mile run, and you come straight off this run up onto a firing line, and then you have to qualify on your M16. And everybody does horrible because everybody's breathing and
so you got to run with full gear,
and then you have to just go straight up and start firing at these pop-up targets, and the people are hitting like 6 out of 40, and I hit 38 out of 40. And
so are you qualified not only on your shooting ability but also the time you ran too? So is it like a double?
You have there is a time standard, but you're running in formation.
Okay.
So they call it double time.
So you all arrive at the same time, but some people are.
Oh yeah. Well,
right.
What they did was they would take 10 of us at a time, and we would start out like 2 minutes ahead of the next guys, and we would get there, fire, get out, and as soon as we got out, they were running up to the line to fire. That way we stair-stepped it, so everybody was fatigued when they got there.
Sure, makes sense.
Nobody got to wait around.
And catch their breath and cheat. Yeah, and
simulates firing under stressful situations.
Firing under duress, and it's time tested, and it's very, very true. But it does happen because 2 days of no sleep, and you've had all these different adrenaline dumps over a period of time, and you've had all this cortisol and lactic acid build up in your muscles and then get flushed again, and your body's just physically exhausted. Yeah, you're ravenous, you're starving. and you're kind of burnt out because, adrenaline is like a drug. Like it puts you into overdrive and overamps your body to do miraculous things, and then it just crashes.
And then when it crashes, you crash.
And
So these these trials you're doing. So we talked about getting in. I guess you did basics or boot camp, and you were still young. So when did you deploy? Like as soon as you got done with boot camp and turned 18, or
I turned 18 in April. Then I left as soon as I graduated. I left for basic training. The rest of the Army is an 18-week basic train. I'm sorry, excuse me, 8-week basic training, and then they go to their AIT, their Advanced Individual Training Schools. But for infantry guys, our basic training is 14 weeks long.
Yeah.
So our basic training is almost double what theirs is to start with, and then we go on to our specialty, which they used to have the tow gunner and, like Dragon, all those different crazy tow missiles and stuff that they had. It was all infantrymen that did it, but you had to be a specialist at that. So that was your identifier.
So like your first gig was to do the...
Right. So technically I'm an 11 Charlie because I was a mortarman, but I would have a secondary identifier as a squad designated marksman.
All right. So as soon as you got out of boot camp, did you go straight over?
Boot camp, airborne sniper school. And then I had a little bit of leave. I came home, saw my family. I went to my unit. I met my unit. And then we were gone.
Where they put you whenever you're doing all these, this mortar thing with the tracks riding up and all that. Were you in Iraq or?
Oh yeah. You start out everybody goes into Kuwait. You fly to Kuwait. It's about a 24-hour flight. You fly commercially, which I thought was so weird.
Really?
I had, but I thought like there's
like
going to be
like Turkish Airways.
Yeah, I thought
right
there was going to be like flight attendant. Well, actually, first I thought it was going to be like real military C-130.
Yeah,
but it's
in a
commercial
jet seat,
and it's civilians, and they open the cockpit because we're soldiers and let us go check out all the controls, and they're like, "What's up, dudes?" And because who's more trusted than an American soldier?
And this is 2002,
2003.
So you're flying. I mean, this was before.
This is the height of patriotism.
This is like around like Operation Iraqi Freedom.
This is OIF 1.
He did the
Operation
thing
Iraqi
with
Freedom 1.
Mission accomplished in 2005, right?
Mission accomplished 2004.
Okay, so this was like in the heat of it, and you're flying commercial.
Well, yeah, and OIF 1, 2, it's invasion rules, so it's kind of anarchy, and it's just the whole atmosphere, the whole mood changes when you go from Kuwait, which is a free state, and we didn't have to have our magazines and our weapons in Kuwait.
So you flew into Kuwait,
and we fly into Kuwait,
in dress
and then
uniform.
you have to sit in Kuwait, and you train and get your weapons ready and stuff for about a month, because before you leave, you drive your vehicles to a railhead, and they railhead the vehicles and then ship them to Kuwait by boat. So we got our Humvee, we had to get all of our vehicles, and it takes a month for them to get that far.
Yeah.
So we sat there and waited, and then we got our vehicles and set everything up, and then, you head north up Highway 1.
You were a mortarman for...
I was always with the mortar platoon.
Yeah. So you did that as one of the guys firing them, and then after you're doing these trainings, these
yeah, you always start out. See, they have a system for everything. When you start out there, fresh, brand new, you're a private. You're always a driver. Driver learns all the maintenance for the Humvees and stuff. I mean, there's a 95-point PMCS checklist before you even start a Humvee, which is your preventative maintenance checks and services. Like making sure that your oil level's right and making sure you have brake fluid and all that stuff. The military has it broke down, foolproof, for dummies, because the infantry only requires a 33 score on the ASVAB to be in the infantry, which is the lowest. And I scored a 92, and for me to tell my recruiter that I wanted to be infantry, she looked at me like I was an idiot.
She was like, "You don't want to be a doctor?"
Well, I mean, she said, she was like, you've already taken the ASVAB. She said, you can literally have any job you want.
You'd be a doctor.
Yeah.
Be a nuclear tech.
And I picked to crawl around in the sand and be a grunt. But, I thought if I'm really going to do this for real and I'm going to be in the military, I'm going to do something that is going to challenge me and be hard, and it's going to be something where I have stories.
But I mean, did you from the beginning? Did you want to be a sharpshooter?
Oh
You
yeah,
want to be a sniper? Like
I wanted.
that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is like how you got to that point without like I figured you would have to ask and like kind of put it in their head to want to do that. And maybe they'd help you up, but
you do a little bit once you get to your unit because it kind of slows down and it's kind of like a real job there.
He's a squad designated sharpshooter.
So you had to kind of prove yourself through the trials and just,
once I got there, my platoon sergeant, we did training at JRTC at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and we did urban training there. It's moving under urban terrain and urban fire and stuff like that. But I played paintball growing up too, which, big surprise, another weapon I'm firing. And I'm not a small dude. I mean, 5'10", and I was a striker, and strikers are the the little dudes that run full speed in a paintball tournament, and they slide up to that one air bunker in the middle, and they're shooting each other from like 2 inches away. And
power forward.
I learned how to keep my elbows tucked, everything tucked so tight, and they saw my form when we were moving. And I mean, y'all remember the video game SOCOM from PlayStation back in the day, and they call me Joker. And it wasn't because I was the clown. It was because of the way I moved. I moved like Joker on SOCOM.
You're such a nerd, Josh.
Yeah, so you kind of proved yourself up the line.
Yeah, and they saw that I could move and that I could lead a team, and I was the number one man on the. You have a 4-man team, it's a 4-man stack, and I was the number one man. That's the first guy that goes to the door. 4-man, always got your 6, kicks the door. The other 3, they're in. It's scary. It's scary kicking in doors because you don't know what's on the other side. You don't know if there's a claymore sitting there, and you just gotta roll with the punches.
Were you? Because I think of a sharpshooter, similarly, I think of like a sniper. And you think it's most people think
like a recon sniper.
Yeah, most people think snipers. They think somebody on a mountain or something.
Yeah, dude.
But you were
I didn't
have to. You were just a hot shot.
Well, he's a squad designated sharpshooter.
Yeah, I didn't have to go crawl and lay up on top of a mountain for 5 days and wait for a general to come out. And it was no lone survivor, awesome shit like that. I mean, I did some cool stuff, but most of the time it was like OP stuff where I had triangulation on things where I could move soldiers where they needed to be, and you're the one that had like the line of sight, right? So if we're talking about if we're talking about like urban tactics and you're moving a squad through, you really have to have because that was my specialty,
right? Down the streets, down these pathways,
and I could convene with the platoon sergeant who was on the ground, and I could tell him, hey, y'all need to cover this alley.
Right.
This house is hot. I heard pop shots coming from behind, and I can move people tactically like a chessboard and set them up
like a point man
to annihilate the target. Like I said at the time, I don't know what it is. I think it's that little boy in us that has that G.I. Joe, kind of go get 'em, hooah Rambo mentality, and I did. I always wanted to play soldier, and I got my wish.
I'm pretty sure a lot of that. I mean, not that there aren't like a ton of people out there who grew up hunting or you were any different than anybody else in the South, but there's part of what you were doing in that position is pretty similar to what you would kind of see hunting. Is hunting you're having to
you're stalking,
you're stalking, but you're having to judge distances, like and not just of the animal, but also of like the coverage.
Right.
This bush is halfway between me and this animal.
Well, the first thing we do when we set up, we both have range books. We set up and we pick landmarks that we can both easily identify, and we measure distance to those, and we draw a little map of everything. So I already have all my pre-designated clicks and everything that I need. I see somebody in this window, he's 600 meters. I can adjust, and change minutes of angle, and I can fire that 600 meters and hit this target, and then I can move and hit a 900-meter target and already know ahead of time before I have to fire and have the spotter tell me the round's off.
So you were in more of an offensive position. Y'all had like given targets, Not just patrolling.
We did a lot. I mean, we patrolled every day, but we did a lot of like target acquisition type. They would have some operator on the ground. We would have a briefing, and they would say such and such is in this house on this end of town. Our assets on the ground. He's confirmed, and we would get a picture. We would with his bio on the back. You destroy the picture, and then it's go time. I never knew what they did. I never knew why we were going after them. You don't ask questions.
Right.
Nothing above your pay grade. You
That's
take orders.
how it works.
That's how it works, and it's a very effective method.
It's a good thing you don't even know all that anyway, right? You don't even know all that.
I really don't.
You were in Iraq the whole time?
Yep.
Any like specific places the entire time, or?
I was at. I lived in a little chemical factory outside of Adwar, and there was a big apartment complex called the Mujama complex next to us, and this little fob that I was at was about 30 minutes north of Samara.
What's a fob for people who don't
I'm
know?
sorry. It's a forward operating base, and that forward operating base is usually kind of a makeshift, like pretty quick, hasty, sandbag type, set them up, guard post, and not really safe and secure.
Almost like an outpost.
Pretty dangerous. Yeah. We were, we didn't have one of these big mile around bases that kept us protected. It was a little chemical factory with 300 dudes in it.
camp.
That took mortars. 4 days a week. We got mortared.
So how long did you serve for? So you started in 2002, 2003?
2003. I did 5 years.
5 years.
2008 is when I got out.
So I guess how many tours would there be? Like, what would a tour be considered? I don't know exactly how they. You said you were there. You were in there for 5 years, but how long were you? I guess deployed.
I don't know exactly. And the way they split the tours up is by whatever OIF it is. There's OIF 1 was 03 and
What's OIF?
Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Okay, so
Yeah.
whatever game plan it was.
Every year they just added to it OIF 1, 2, 3, 4. And my last tour was OIF 3. That was in 2005. We were near Tikrit, and that's when the elections were really big, and we had to cover the elections, and their tactics had kind of started to break down at that point. In 2003, they had the Republican Guard, which was a joke. They used old, outdated Russian weapons and tanks. A lot of them malfunctioned.
That was the Iraq army you guys were supposed to be training and everything.
Well, the Republican Guard. This is Saddam's army.
Oh, okay.
They had
Yeah,
uniforms,
okay. I
and
got
you
you.
were fighting. It was actual warfare.
Yeah.
In traditional terms. Force on force, equally distinguishable, and not all this guerrilla type bullshit with the IEDs under the road and bombs and dead animals. And dude, there's just so much trash there that any one thing can be a marker for a bomb. And to go to sign a will at 18 and have beneficiaries and have pictures taken of my tattoos and stuff to identify my body, it was all very humbling and very surreal to experience. And then to go and do it, and then that happened to some of my friends, and these guys are at the peak of their lives, just graduated high school, and all this stuff happened. And
I'm sure that you had to have sustained some injuries too. Right?
I did. I was hit by a couple of IEDs. My eardrums were messed up pretty bad. I have tinnitus. So I constantly have to have
On the road, you were hit by like an IED on the road or what?
Yeah, once was on the way to Saddam's spider hole where they found him less than a mile away from the chemical factory where we lived.
Wow.
And so after they found him, all these generals and all these
That's
guys.
crazy. That's crazy to think about.
Dude, you should
crazy.
have seen him. He looked scared.
I remember the pictures.
Like the hole they found him in was the size of a cinder block, and it had 2 pieces of rebar and it looped, and you lifted up this cinder block and it was man-sized to slide down into, and he was living in this little nasty hole. We were in this place.
Mission accomplished.
It just to go over there and see the way these people live their day-to-day lives on the norm and what brings them joy, and it just gave me so much perspective on our privilege and how fortunate we are to be where we are. And
Yeah, dude, those people, they have nothing.
they literally live in bag houses and wear sacks for clothes. You know, they don't wear shoes. There's a lot of inbreeding. It's really crazy to see it with your own eyes. And they take the people, mentally challenged people, they take them and they tie them to trees naked. And it's savage, and it's just so primitive. And you can see how old the culture is, because I was right on the Tigris River, and where the chemical factory was. You know, that's a cradle of life. That's where everything started. And it is almost prehistoric there. The bugs are huge, and the palm trees are 75 feet tall, and it was really cool to see. And the Samarran ruins before those ISIS fucks destroyed it. That really made me sad.
That's a terrible injustice. That's not those Sumer ruins. Those aren't just like like Iraq's ruins. Those are the world's. You know what I mean? Like, those belong to the world.
Absolutely.
Those belong to like the entire Western world.
Yeah.
It'd
be like cutting up the Mona Lisa or something. I mean,
I think it's worse. I think it's much worse than that.
It was hard.
That's really hard to think about right now with Syria getting blown up. You know, Syria's 10,000 years old. Aleppo and Aleppo's like the oldest city in the world, dude. It's getting blown apart.
Yeah, and in 2003, you know, these guys, the town of Al Nasiriyah was overrun in 20 minutes. That was the first opposition hit on Highway 1. 3rd Brigade, 3rd Division spearheaded the entire operation for OIF. I mean, my unit was the first unit into Iraq, and we led the charge all the way into Baghdad. And it was hellfire and brimstone the whole way.
So you get in, you train up, you deploy, you guys keep pushing forward. You see it all the way through, all the way till Saddam's capture and everything. When did you start?
He's captured, you know, the regime's toppled, and then you have Al-Qaeda starts to kind of pick up steam a little bit, but they're hiring these freedom fighters from Syria and stuff. And this is around the time that V-beds are starting to get popular. And a V-bed is a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device.
Oh, where they just drive it through the gates.
And yeah, they'll have a little car or a Isuzu or Nissan truck, because that's all they had, and they fill it up with like 1-inch Russian ball bearings and these big copper rings, and they'll put gallons of diesel in there, and they'll take 155 artillery rounds that they found, and they'll wire them together with like a dead man switch, and they'll come up to those checkpoints with American soldiers and just, you know, try to get as close as they can before they get killed, and try to detonate it before they get killed. It's very, very scary, because the rules of engagement had become so strict at that point that you can't, there was no shoot first, ask questions later, or you go to prison for the rest of your life.
But that type of enemy doesn't abide by rules of engagement.
And there's exactly, and when you play by the rules but your enemy doesn't, I mean, what chance do you stand?
Well, where I was going with my question is after Saddam was captured, after that happened and the war started to change, when did you start making your exit? You know, did you make your exit from an entry?
No, I lost a lot of friends. I saw a lot of my friends who started out with that sparkle in their eye. I just saw these husks coming back, and, you know, because they never left over there. Their minds never left over there. And combat it's so extreme. It's the most extreme thing that humans can do to one another. And just the emotions and things that are felt and the camaraderie and everything is so intense that once you've been through that, nothing in life matches it. And it's something that soldiers constantly yearn for. Sebastian Younger does a TED Talk on it that's fantastic.
Well, I mean, a lot of those guys that do the squirrel suits and
And
based like a lot of those guys are
the
you know,
Rispolti. It was
ex-special
Rispolti
forces,
dudes, and Sebastian Younger was at Rispolti, and they absorbed 20% of all the combat in that 6 Mile valley, and it was incredible. I mean, those guys, they were doing 1 month rotations, and it's the way we live. These Air Force guys, you know, I hadn't had a shower in months. I was one solid color, just like a sand monster, and our idea of R&R was going to an Air Force base, and we got to eat Pizza Hut. Like, that was our 4-day weekend. And we were willing to fucking get blown up with an IED to go eat Pizza Hut. It was fucking nuts,
crazy,
man. I'd be like, no, dude, I'm getting that Fisher Spooner CD at the PX. I saw it. I'm willing to die for it.
Oh, that's nuts, man.
But that's what we did. And I was standing in line one time, and there's these 2 Air Force guys in front of me, and this guy was like, Steve, you'll never believe what happened this morning. And he was like, Chris, what was it? And he goes, I only had 15 minutes of hot water. And I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
I like that you had a little lisp
Chris,
to the,
no,
to the
tell
Air
me.
Force.
Dude, what I think is so funny too is officers in the Army call each other by their first names. And so we would get around officers and we'd be like, oh, Stephen, how did you enjoy your drinks at the officers club last night? Ha ha. And really dog on those guys. But Air Force guys, even enlisted guys, call each other by their first names. So we would always fucking call each other Sebastian or fucking Turbo or some crazy name. Yeah, it's really hard for new platoon leaders to meld with platoon sergeants because of the age difference usually and the experience. You have a 24-year-old college graduate, you know, who barely passed basic training, and he's running an entire platoon, and it's
you see
savages.
you see that cliche in any kind of war movie where like the young fresh person shows up to a platoon or whatever, and everybody's all pissed off because they're all like,
he's got to win them over, and then
they're all like battle torn, But I mean,
and he does something heroic, and then they all love him.
So toward the end of that operation, you said the last one was 3. That was 2005. Mm-hmm. And you said that was your last tour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
so that's whenever you
said you started until 2008. So
yeah,
your last tour. Does that mean that was like the last time you were like?
Well, I got back in 2006, and they tried to get me to re-enlist, and I just, you get lucky so many times.
But you were still in the Army, but
I was still in. But the infantry divisions are kind of on a rotation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And the way the rotation was going, I was going to get out. If I had been in a month later, I would have been stop lost, which a stop loss means, okay, say I'm supposed to get out in August of 2015, but my platoon is leaving for Afghanistan in September of 2015 for 18 months. My contract automatically gets extended for 18 more months against my will because I fell within the guidelines of a stop loss.
That's what happened?
No, I was a month away from that happening. So I barely missed it, but I didn't want to go back. You like I said, you get lucky so many times, and I felt like, my ticket was going to get punched. And
so it was like you did 5 years starting in 2003.
Mm-hmm. But I trained. I mean, there was.
So you got
my
out
training
in
was
2008?
long too. Yeah.
So you.
It was a lot of downtime and a
So
lot of.
where were you whenever you weren't in Iraq?
We had that's one of the perks of being infantry because your job is war. So when you're not at war, you tend to have a lot more free time, especially after a deployment. We would come back. We would get like 30 days
back
of
to
leave.
United States? Or?
Yeah, we would get back to Fort Benning. We were back on post and had regular PT and regular formations. Because you have a 9-to-5 job. You get up about 4 a.m. You go to formation. You do PT for a couple hours. You go back. You eat, shower. Then you go back to the office about 9 to 11. You may be cleaning your weapons or you may be quizzing each other on field manual information, effective range of an M16 or firing rate of a 240.
Yeah.
Just little stuff like that, busy work. Or you may be testing pro mask or doing dime drills.
So you're still doing Army stuff. You're
still
on
doing
base.
Army stuff, but it's lax after a deployment. Like we would hang around and cut jokes, and we would have an 11:30 formation for lunch. Then we would have a 1300 formation, and that would be end of day, and they'd release us. So we'd work 9 to 1 and get off for the rest of the day.
So how long were you back before you knew that you didn't want to go back out?
Probably it was probably 4 months after we got back or so when I started to have when the PTSD that I have started to its first onset began.
So you had no problems until you had gotten back.
No, and
well, I'm not saying no problems.
I've always wondered about. It's strange how it works. Our bodies have these amazing abilities to maintain homeostasis at any cost. Our body will do whatever it can to operate at max efficiency and comfortability.
Not just physically, but mentally too.
Yeah, to get you through. So your brain will do these little tricks and things to cope with whatever your reality is. And so when it's happening, I had trained for so long. That was my job, and I was good at my job. And that's just... that's your reality. I was a soldier doing a soldier's job, and it's when you get back and you start to think about things and you're like, man, that that bullet did go right by my ear when I went in that door. And, you count those close calls, and the fear comes later, always. I was never afraid when it was happening, and I wasn't afraid when it was over, because you would just have that. There's a really weird, eerie silence, like after something's popped off for a while, as the dust settles and, people are counting casualties and stuff like that. And it's just kind of a weird, reflective period. And, it's why people go skydiving and stuff, and they crave that adrenaline, and that there's nothing that matches it ever. And guys come back, and it's so hard to go from being completely vigilant 100% all the time, ready to kill or be killed, and then you come back and you turn in your weapon, and they're like, go put on civilian clothes and go to the mall and have fun. And there's no in between, it's just one or the other. And so you come back, and then you're afraid someone's going to stab you under body armor you're not wearing in your kidneys.
Have you heard? I heard it said on a podcast. Special Forces guy was talking about something. He said that it made sense that one of the biggest reasons that you don't have such a high PTSD rate in like Special Forces people that do those kind of offensive things is because they're always on the offensive. They're always on the attack and everything. And infantry guys on FOBs are, always having to wait for an attack. And there's something about that never knowing what's happening, always.
Yeah, it's always a hurry up and wait. And that's what made IEDs so scary, was because they were completely unpredictable and they were absolutely devastating. I mean, at any one given time, you'd be cruising down the road, and, I may be singing some Wham in my head or something, and then this instant split second, you feel all the air pull out, and you know what it is, but it all happens so fast, there's nothing you can do, and you feel it, and then it pops the other way, and you can feel all that pressure. That's something they never capture in movies. People's clothes don't move. They don't get soft tissue damage. If they get really close to explosions in movies, it's silly.
A lot of people don't understand exactly what happens in that. The pressure is more likely to kill you than a lot of other things,
the pressure alone,
the percussive force is what kills.
And it's so rapid and so drastic that it ruptures lungs and
it tears cardiac. Cardiac muscle.
Yeah, like a grenade, shrapnel travels along the path of the ground and also path of least resistance. So, if you can't throw a grenade back, or if you have to jump, you jump away, you cross your legs up on your toes, that protects your femoral artery and stuff, you know, your vitals there. You get up on your elbows because that gives you the least contact with the actual ground. And you cover your ears and you open your mouth. And that will prevent, you know, the rapid pressure change from blowing your lungs up.
Yeah, then you just got to
and rupturing your eardrums.
You got to hope for no shrapnel.
And hope that, you know, it's just not your time. That's all you can do. We had little pits that we did, like in the mortar pit, we had this little hole that we would dig, and it was like 3 feet deep. And if a grenade got thrown into the mortar pit, you just kick it into that hole, and it goes down, and the explosion goes straight. Yeah,
it goes
just
up.
straight up.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. All right, let's talk about after this. So whenever you come back home, man, this is what's really interesting to me, because I remember the way the times changed, and I feel like, so if you're coming back, you're still enlisted, but you're not deployed, like 2006. Whenever you went in, dude, everybody was like, hooray, hurrah, flag waving, everything.
Yeah.
When you come back, people are a little more soured on the whole engagement.
Actually, not. Actually, they weren't like that. We were very fortunate, man.
See, I was just
the
speaking from the way
Vietnam
it seemed
vets,
like, you know?
they really got a bum rap. You know,
absolutely.
they were drafted for one and
They
then
didn't have a
called
choice.
baby killers,
Yeah.
and they got back.
They didn't have a choice.
I mean, that's messed up. No, this was fortunately during a patriotic time, and I remember coming home on leave.
Yeah.
And I flew into Dallas because it's an international airport, and I'll never forget. I got off the plane. I came into the terminal, and there was like 500 people, just all these people with signs, and they were cheering for us. And
People were like, yeah,
they
welcome home,
man,
right?
dude. They loved us so much that I just burst into tears. Like, it moved me so much emotionally, and it gave so much validity to what I was doing. Just that one moment was worth so much
To see the
of the
appreciation.
pain and
Yeah.
hurt that I had gone through.
Yeah.
Because when the bullets are flying, dude, the politics go out the window. There's none of us were thinking about President Bush during any of that shit. It's your brothers next to you, and any one of us, I know, would have jumped in front of a bullet or onto a grenade for another brother without thinking about it, because you have that tightness and that closeness and that camaraderie. And when you're around those kind of people, it brings out the best you. It brings out that, you know, that hero in you, kind of. And I would have given my life for any of those guys. I love them. And those are the guys that, you know, if one of them was to text me right now and be like, hey man, I need you to fly to Michigan tomorrow. I need you here. I wouldn't ask questions. I would get a plane ticket.
That's another thing it's hard to adjust from too, is that level of camaraderie.
Yeah. I mean, you feel totally alone, even when around your family.
Yeah, that's a thing that
You're surrounded.
commonly said.
And you're surrounded by people who don't have any idea the scope of what you just went through. It's just this thing that makes you just sit back in a chair with your eyes real big.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're carrying on, and you just don't, for a while. I mean, because that's all you've lived too. So for a while, my sister could say anything. She'd be like, yeah, I bought this new CD. I'm like, when I was in Iraq, you know.
Yeah,
Because
it's hard
all
to
I
relate to each
knew.
other.
Well, I
And,
mean, what a lot of people say is that, you know, that they honor the sacrifice that veterans make, and they mostly talk about their lives, but they don't talk about, you know, everything else comes with it. Like you know, the people that went over and fought, like you, any veteran that has fought, or any of the one of them that served, have had to be exposed to things that most people don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to think about the sights that you've seen or any of those things, you know.
Well, it's hard to comprehend what you don't experience. That's a huge thing, right? I mean, Josh sitting here telling us.
I talked to Aaron about this before I joined basic training, because I had signed up for the Army, you know, but it was a couple of months before I graduated and actually shipped off. So I was in, but I hadn't left yet, and I would lay awake at night and just try to imagine, you know, what this was going to be like, and every different scenario, every possible thing that I imagined and thought was nothing like what I thought it was going to be. It was so much harder. Your brain, like when you imagine yourself in a fight, you basically imagine yourself fighting like a dummy, or them moving the way you want them to move, not how people actually move or how their actual body weight feels. with resistance, and people overestimate their abilities a lot, but it pushes you to your limit. And for infantry guys, we get to do this thing called the bayonet, and it's a 30-mile road march, and it's grueling. We do it at the end of this 2-week bivouac that we do, and a bivouac is basically camping in the woods and doing fire guard and crawling around in the mud. But it's the very last thing you do before you get your cross rifles pinned on you. And you do this, and it's absolutely horrible. Like your feet, I had these blood blisters that cover the entire bottom of my foot, of both my feet. So when we would stop to pull guard on the side of the road or do some little weird mission, when I would stand back up, the pain in my feet was worse than anything else that I'd ever felt. Well, until airborne school. That was awful. But you do this and you push yourself and you really think that you can't do it. And then you get there, and these drill sergeants that have been so hard on you and have just been punishing you every day and just grinding it into you, they're sincerely proud of you. And it's, you get this huge rush of endorphins, and you all drink grog together around this big fire, and you're all infantrymen, and, you've entered this brotherhood that's been around for 200 years of all these guys. And you think back to all these other veterans and of all these other insane wars. And there's a lot of pride in that. There's a lot of pride to earn that. And it's the best and worst time of your life. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And I thought I hated it when I was there, but you miss it when it's gone. And it's a really bittersweet thing. But it's definitely the camaraderie, because you'll never trust anybody like you trust them ever in your life.
So you got back from a tour, you came back, you started feeling this started coming on around 4 months. Was it? I mean, I'm just wondering why you didn't go back out. Was it like kind of it caused problems for you?
No. Well, no. So part of the infantry guys, I've told Aaron the statistic: 1% of Americans join the military. 1% of that are in a combat MOS, and you get out with no job skills other than to hurt and maim and kill other people, and you're basically damaged goods. I mean, you're good from 18 to 23 is like your peak, and they run you ragged, and then they just kind of let you go.
Those the guys that didn't have good scores?
No, that's everybody.
Everybody.
I mean, yeah.
So in infantry, they don't.
A good portion of them are guys that didn't get good scores.
Oh yeah.
So it's not all of them, but yeah.
Yeah, but the infantry is just so hard on your body, and it's you don't see old guys in the infantry. They're always officers and stuff like that, but you don't see old enlisted guys. It's just too hard on them. They ended up getting a medical discharge before that. Or they'll kill themselves.
What time it is?
Hour.
It's an hour in? Let's take a halfway break. You want to take a halfway break?
We'll take a little break.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
We're back. We're back from a short little break.
Where we left off, we were talking about you getting back from your tour and started to experience
right.
PTSD and things like that. So
you get back. You get back, and it's called you're in garrison is what it's called, and that's when you have your 9 to 5, and it's your regular routine days, and that's kind of supposed to be your middle ground, kind of like your cool down lap to transition you from combat back to civilian life and kind of integrate you back. But they ask you all when we get back. They put us all in the gymnasium, and they're like, "Is anyone experiencing any psychological problems or anything like that?"
They ask you all together instead of individually.
Together.
Right.
And of course, not a single person is going to raise their hand.
So they see you in a big room, you got to raise your hand.
And no one wants to say, I'm the one that psychologically couldn't handle what happened, when
the nail that sticks out gets hammered.
Realistically, most of the room couldn't handle what we had just done.
Right.
And so everybody's dealing with this stuff individually, and it wreaks havoc on people. I mean, they say it's 22 is the number they throw around a lot, but it's 30 veterans kill themselves a day. And I've personally experienced that, and I've been to many funerals, and taps will set me off too. Anytime I hear it, I will just start bawling.
Well, there's a bigger problem than the 30 veterans that kill themselves a day too. I mean, look at the percentage of the homeless population that's veterans.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes
it's a failure to readjust to normal life, right?
Right. Well, and like I said, I worked at M&D in the lumberyard from the time I was 16 till I left from the military. Great work ethic, never late, nothing like that. Go to the military, no problems, do great. I get out of the military, and now I can't hold down a job for more than 6 months. Like,
why you get bored?
Just something. Well, part of it was the substance abuse was interfering with me being able to show up on time and perform my duties consistently.
The substance,
because the PTSD started to gradually get worse to where I was terrified to even think about laying down and trying to go to bed because the intrusive thoughts were so bad.
Was this as soon as you got out, or while you're still in there?
No, this is when I was still in, and it continued to get worse after I got out. Went untreated because I didn't want to talk to anybody. Pride, we're all proud. We didn't want to do it. So I started to self-medicate instead of seeking professional help to deal with my problems. And your body builds a tolerance, like we talked about earlier, to maintain homeostasis at the most comfortable level. So any drug or substance you do, you're going to build a tolerance to it to where you can do more so that your body can maintain that level. And I come from, basically super addict, so I got a concentrated dose of that. And I was probably prone to addiction beforehand, but the PTSD exacerbated what was probably underlying there anyway. And I went from not really ever having a problem with any one thing to having a problem with every single thing. And I used it all as an escape, either to put me in such a deep sleep that I didn't remember anything, or to not go to sleep at all, to just completely avoid sleep. And, you just spin your wheels. You can't function and maintain like that and try to do that every day. Your body just can't handle it.
So whenever you kind of self-realize that you were having problems mentally, physically, I'm sure you try to get help from the VA, right?
I was still in the Army, and I enrolled in ASAP, which is the Army Substance Abuse Program, because I had such a terrible problem.
And you
voluntarily
did it.
I went to my platoon sergeant. I said, Sergeant Tinker, I got a problem with this, and I need to get some help. So I was seeking counseling and stuff, and they did a surprise UA, and I popped hot.
Yeah.
And a substantial amount too. Like
was it like a piss test?
Yeah, they did a
urine analysis.
Yeah, what they'll do is they'll do what's called a 10%, and they'll randomly select 10% of the company. It's computer generated. That 10% has to take a UA.
Yeah, I was wondering how you were able to maintain an addiction, whatever you were.
Well, I also had, and I knew when there was going to be one, so I could prepare for it. But I guess higher chain of command got wind that information was being released. So they did a 10%, and then 2 days later they did 100%.
Wow.
And they popped a lot of people.
Damn.
Because that was how you would do it. You knew if you took a piss test that day, you could party that night, and you weren't gonna have to piss for another month.
But you were already.
But I was so deep in it.
Were you already voluntarily enrolled in that program though?
Yes,
yeah.
and I was in that program.
Right.
You were in the U.S. at that time?
Yeah.
This was
Georgia,
Gary,
Fort Benning.
Georgia?
This is in Garrison, yeah.
Yeah, and they did that surprise, and I had been up for the 2 days from the last piss test.
Yeah.
And
Dang, that's a long bender.
dude, my piss looked like Newcastle. It was bad.
Gross.
I mean, I'm talking about the
Gross.
froth
Oh,
on
my
top and
God.
everything. It was dark. And 23,590 nanograms of cocaine in my system. And I got called in front of the lieutenant colonel. I got a field grade Article 15. It was a big ordeal. And he said that the lab had to test my urine 3 times because they thought that I had literally dropped urine in my cocaine.
Cocaine
in my cocaine, yeah.
That's how concentrated it was.
But it was
Yeah.
it was that concentrated. It was ridiculous.
But surely since you were already voluntarily enrolled in that program,
Well, that
the consequences weren't as dire on you as others, right?
I mean, a field grade Article 15 is the worst thing that can happen to you. Well, you can get a court martial. That's worse.
Did that happen before or after you went in there? You went in because
That
of
was
that?
this was towards the end of. This was after my last tour. Towards
what's
the end of my military career.
What's an Article 15?
An Article 15. So when you join the military, you don't follow civilian laws anymore. You fall under UCMJ, which is Uniform Code of Military Justice. The military has its own laws that they abide by, and
like a tribunal.
yeah, I mean they have tribunals, and anything they say trumps any state, agency. So if a soldier got arrested in downtown Columbus for public intoxication, the first sergeant had to go get him from the civilian jail and take him to the jail on post. It was very, very strict and crazy. And our brigade commander, who's in charge of about 5,000 troops, has a formation with all of us. 5,000 of us standing at attention. And he tells us, this brigade has a drug epidemic.
What percentage do you think got popped?
He told us the numbers. He said it was like 932 people took piss tests and 417 failed or something.
Golly.
So about half.
And it was actually the numbers that he actually gave. It was over half.
Okay.
And so I got a field grade Article 15, which means I worked from 4 a.m. to midnight for 45 days straight, doing hard labor, like filling sandbags and mowing hills. And they're very, very creative in their punishment. But I mean, it gives you no time to wash your uniforms, and they break your mind with sleep deprivation and hard labor. And it's
Well, you were already used to sleep deprivation.
it was
but yeah.
brutal. Well, I thought I was.
Dang,
Until I started doing hard labor for 18, 20 hours a day, and dude, I just got to where I was hallucinating, and it was miserable because you're on restriction too. You can't your barracks and work. That's it. There's no fun. There's no anything.
Is that the program or is that the punishment?
That's the punishment. It's 45 days, and then forfeiture of 2 months' pay.
Wow.
And if you're an E4 or below, you lose your rank to an E1. If you're an E5, you lose rank to E4, and anything above that just falls one rank. Anything past non-commissioned officer, you just lose one. Yeah, man, it was bad. 'Cause nobody could cope, and nobody was willing to admit that there was a problem. So everybody, found their solace in drugs
Well, I mean,
and hookers and
hook-
scotch.
and scotch. I mean, those are all self-medications.
Dude,
So
we had this guy in my platoon that came from the Ranger Battalion, and his name was Hunkovic, and he was one of the weirdest dudes I've ever met in my life. He was like this weird little blonde bodybuilder dude that like oiled himself up, and he drank scotch in his room, and he was just a really, really strange dude. That's the first time I thought of him in a long time.
I bet, yeah.
So you mentioned this program, substance abuse program inside?
Yeah.
Was that something that you got on after you?
Yeah.
After the,
Yeah. We'll fast forward a little bit. So I get out and I come back to Beaumont. My parents are like, you stay here for, a month or so, get on your feet, find a job, and kind of get back into the swing of civilian life, dude. And I just never quite adapted back to it. And my first job was working on these big smokestacks out at like Cedar Bayou plant and stuff, and with wrenches tied to my arms 300 feet in the air for $8 an hour, and it was stupid. And I couldn't, nothing would fill that void, and I just went from one job to the next, one job to the next, one job to the next, and it never got any better. But I didn't have any job skills for anything in the civilian world, unless I was to teach, a door breaching class or some type of weapons class. I mean, that's really all I have.
More security, general security.
Insecurity, yeah, general security.
Be a security consultant.
Well, but because of the addiction, I became a felon over one pain pill.
Yeah?
Yeah. I became a felon over that.
Over one pain pill.
Over one pain pill. And lost my right to vote. Can't own a firearm. They made me this weapon of precision and destruction, and now I can't even legally own a firearm.
Right. You can't. You can't vote for your
representative. It just blows my mind. Yeah, for somebody to fight for this country, and now I can't have any say or anything because of one mistake.
Is that a permanent thing, or is that
that's
a certain amount of time?
Well, you know what though, mine, my lawyer, I gave him $2,000. He helped me nair one. He showed up into the courtroom looking like Dr. Gonzo. And he was sweaty. I mean, he really did. He looked like Charlie Sheen. Like he had just been partying and doing coke and hookers for like 4 days.
Tiger's blood.
Didn't know my name. I'm giving this dude $2,000. I think you learn somebody's name for $2,000. And I got fucked over big time. And so I went to the law library while I was locked up, and I had this charge dropped to a 1244B, which converts a state jail felony into a Class A misdemeanor. So I'm actually not for sure. I was able to buy 9mm ammo and extended magazines. So I don't think you could do that.
I don't know. I don't know how the laws work.
Especially not extended magazines. They were bought legitimately.
Your charge got dropped to...
The charge got dropped to a Class A misdemeanor.
Oh, well, you don't have a felony.
But I do.
Yeah, but...
Because I was charged...
What you get...
They also charged me with delivery of that controlled substance.
Oh,
so
you
it
still
was
got
possession and delivery.
Okay. Well, you still... I was going to say, what they charge you with isn't what gets on your record.
Yeah,
it's what you...
No, and they're supposed to run them concurrent like that, and what they'll do is if you get pulled over and you got an ounce of meth and you got a half ounce of pot and you got a little baggie of mushrooms and all, they're going to charge you with the meth. They're going to take the worst thing and charge you with that.
Yeah.
And usually they'll either drop the other charges or it runs CC and it doesn't matter.
So how old were you when you got back and when all this was going down?
I was 23. I started experimenting with harder drugs because what I was doing wasn't doing the trick. And I went down a path that no one should ever go down because it's the final path as far as the way you consume the drug. When you go straight to the bloodstream, there's nothing else you can do. You know what I mean? Like that's it. It's very dangerous and very scary. And of all those people that were alive when I started doing that, there's probably 2 or 3 of us that are left alive now. They've all either, OD'd or died from health problems because of that lifestyle. And it's no way to live.
You dodged a lot of bullets in your day.
Teflon, homeboy.
Yeah, you are Teflon, bro.
That's what my
For
sister
real.
calls me.
I believe it.
Calls me Teflon.
See, that's a really important thing that I wish that some people that think they're staunch conservatives would understand. People have this really weird black and white stance on, air quotes, drugs or substances and stuff like that. Is that in the early 1900s, heroin and cocaine, they were in like soda pops.
Well, yeah,
they were medicines. And what people don't understand is that these substances are very dangerous, but there's also a lot of pharmaceuticals that are very dangerous. We have an opioid problem right
Absolutely.
now that doctors prescribe people that don't need it. We have amphetamines that are prescribed to children. And people don't think of these as drugs, but they think of all these other substances on the street,
right?
Just because they're black market as drugs.
Because a man went to school for a long time, and he wrote them to you, so they're okay.
But the thing is when people
he's not qualified.
When people have problems, especially like problems like PTSD.
Well, the drug's not the problem. It's they have
exactly
they're medicating themselves. Or
that's
you
what I'm
medicating
saying.
Yourself,
they're also treating the symptoms, and they're not treating the actual cause,
the root of it.
The root.
And since there's a failure in the system like that because
Well, I mean,
because
he mentioned the failure earlier in that, like, the one chance that he had that they asked him if he had any stress or anything like that was
exactly
in a completely like
And they do that on purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
They put you in situations where you can't come
That's a planned
forward.
failure.
Dude,
Yeah, it's a planned
all
failure.
Of that, everything they do from the minute you get off that bus where you start your basic training is planned down to the very last detail for physical and psychological warfare against you.
For sure.
You know, and they know how to play you because they can take any one individual in this huge mass of individuals and they can make you into a single unit.
It's mold you, yeah.
They can break everybody.
See, that's the whole thing, saying that it's brainwashing, all these things, and that's kind of, I see that as necessary to have an army that functions.
Yeah, they do it in a way though.
Well,
that's gratifying.
We're kind of getting off that track though. The track I was trying to make the point of these substances and substance abuse, right? And how people blame people that are abusing substance for it, like they're a problem instead of the root of the problem, right?
Well, and I don't think.
Yeah, and I think
they're criminalizing the action.
Yeah.
right, and I think the consequences are too dire, right? Like you just said, you're a felon. The consequences are too dire, and the thing really is that the drug problem isn't a criminal problem, right? It's a public health problem, and I just wanted to finish out my sentiment by saying that
certain drugs should be illegal because they affect the way you think and behave, and you will engage in.
Yeah, they can
stay
stay illegal, but I think that if you're going to get in trouble for certain drugs, I don't think the punishment should be like going
Putting
to
you in a
prison. I think the punishment should be taking you to
I was locked up and
rehab.
I served this country, and I'm a nonviolent offender. I've never resisted. Well, I did that one time, but that was a little different. I've never tried to evade. That's good. Don't do that. You can't be a trustee.
I will not. But
just let them take you. They're gonna get you.
Yeah, I was just trying to make that point where I just don't. I don't really. Consume.
If you're prone to addictive behavior and traits,
which you are,
which I am. Even as a kid, anything that I started to do that I liked, I would compulsively do it. Skateboard,
you have
music,
kind of a
all those
compulsive
things.
personality.
I do, and I'll do them until I've mastered them, and then on to the next thing. Got to do the next thing.
Yeah, but you can't master drugs.
No,
and you can't master drugs, and you're always chasing that very first one, and you spin your wheels, and anything you're physically dependent on is just it's a full-time job. I mean, when you're trying to make money to get drugs, and you're getting drugs so that you can go make money, and it's just a never-ending circle.
Yeah,
and it always leads to the same place. You're always either homeless with all your bridges burned, or you're back in jail,
or you're dead.
It's just sad.
Dead.
Yeah.
It is sad, and it's a never-ending loop for a lot of people.
Well, it's sad that, like, as a society, what probably not the main cause. I don't know what all the causes are, but one of the reasons that these veterans, are coming back and having these problems is because as a society, or what they've been set up as, and you mentioned this kind of as like being strong. You don't want to be seen as crying or anything like that. And it's like,
you don't want to be singled out.
Yeah, that too.
Everybody
but
tries to kind of
the nail that sticks out gets hammered.
But we
bro.
have these warriors.
Military.
We have these warriors that have gone through all these things and been strong, but they can't even let themselves, release their emotions.
Yeah,
because
you have to put up that stone cold brave face, and the one that laughs the loudest is usually the one that's the saddest, the one that's crying inside. And they put up that front. And
comedians, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, my whole life, I've used comedy as a diffuser, as a defense mechanism, as a coping mechanism, deflection.
Right.
Anything. Because I'm a people pleaser, and I'm accepted because I can make people laugh.
Right.
I can make anybody laugh.
You can, dude. I've seen it. But it's so strange because this stuff seems so obvious to me. I struggle with understanding how other people don't understand. Right, like we have laws in place that severely punish people for very obvious reasons. We already talked about.
It's an outdated, flawed system. It needs to be gone over again. The war on drugs is old Reaganomics, and that
the war on drugs is just a dumb idea.
It's cost billions of dollars, and it's done nothing.
It's like having a war on jealousy. It just doesn't. There's nothing to wage war on with the war on drugs.
That a lot of them already with a predisposition to addiction. And it's all an irregulation of dopamine and serotonin in the brain.
Right, and now our Attorney General is trying to roll back, things. That's what I'm saying. Is these things seem so obvious to me. I just struggle with understanding how they're not obvious to other people.
I'll let y'all know too. All the stuff Trump said about helping. I'm about the vets. I'm helping the vets. Trump's not helping the vets.
Well, that was a major platform.
Trump cut our funding. I lost money.
That's right.
You lost your benefits?
I lost half my benefits.
I think the only thing that
he got elected
is related to like family.
Last January, I lost the SSI, so that was like $1,000 a month.
But they just had a vote to raise the defense budget. So they're raising the defense budget.
That goes to like pro mask and body armor, and that goes to stuff for active military.
So they're raising the defense budget, but they like your benefits got cut in half.
Yeah, but dude, I mean, what am I? I'm just someone that was fighting that's now obsolete,
right?
And now I'm just something that they're having to pay for.
And I mean that's been something that's been happening for a while.
You're a statistic.
I am.
You're a statistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
and I have to rely on that health care, and the VA's been giving Americans a second chance to die for their country for almost 100 years.
I took a coworker to the VA one time and they died an hour and a half later. Did I ever tell you this story? This was a long time ago. I was super young, but I'm thinking he was a Vietnam vet, but he was an addict too. I'm pretty sure he had a crack problem, but I took him. He was coughing and freaking everybody out. He was a forger. I took him to the VA.
He probably had pulmonary embolism.
Yeah, I said he probably did. I'm sure he did.
Probably
he was the right.
Loose.
Yeah, he was at the right age, and that would make sense to me. I was waiting in the lobby for like an hour on this dude to come back because they said, "Hey, take him to the VA." He didn't have a car or anything, so I took him. Work called me like, "Where you at, man? We told you just to drop him off." I was like, "All right, cool. I'll come back." I left my number and. About 45 minutes later, I got called, and he did.
He did.
And yeah, so I've seen that. I've seen the problem. I've seen the underfunded VA, and also
it's terrifying. Dude, when I've been in there,
it's just all this stuff is just like swept under the rug, because it's the ugly side of
it's federal, and you'd be amazed at what is controlled and what's released and.
But we have all the stats, we have all the numbers. We know it's bad, but nothing.
Well.
Like there's 2 million unclaimed.
They vote on some VA bill every year, but it's
nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens, and nobody.
I don't understand it.
With all this, with the increased patriotism and support your troops, all that stuff, nothing is that they haven't changed it.
This is what happened. So I got out of the military. I immediately applied for VA benefits. I was denied. 6 months later, I applied again. I was denied. So fast forward 7 years, not 7 years, 2012 is when I reapplied. I moved to Houston. I checked myself into the Houston DeBakey VA because I was wanting to get off the substances, and they have a substance abuse program there. And
this is like a bigger VA, right? Because in Houston,
DeBakey's pretty big, and it's one of the better ones in the nation.
Gotcha.
I actually do commend a lot of the work they do there. They're pretty fantastic with the vets. But I went in there to detox from all this really, really bad stuff, and they had an opening in the Rover program, which is a program for severe PTSD, and one of the guys had canceled, so there was an open spot. The director had come to my room and asked me, Mr. Briggs, would you like to be a part of this group? I really think it'd be beneficial for you. And I just said, no, leave me alone, and rolled over. And the third morning...
Well, you were detoxing, right?
Yeah, severely. And the third morning she came in, I was laying in my bed crying, and I said, I'd like to do the program.
So what is this? What's the Rover program?
The Rover program is a 30-day inpatient program that... a lot of PTSD is avoidance, is avoiding anything that triggers thoughts or any kind of feelings about the traumatic experience. So they make you confront those things, and they make you write out, your most traumatic experience, and you work with a psychiatrist and a psychologist pretty hands-on, pretty intimately for 30 days. And you live in the hospital and you don't leave. And I've learned a lot of things about myself, and I learned a lot of the unexplained and irrational, impulsive behavior I was engaging in, and dangerous behavior I was engaging in.
Probably a lot of self-destructive tendencies.
Oh, very self-destructive.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was from the PTSD and the survivor's guilt, and
One of the things about PTSD is that one of the problems they have with treating it, from what I've read, is that people with it, they will lock it out and refuse to go back, because you have to kind of go back to it to deal with it.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. On the avoidance issue. And PTSD is a lot of avoidance because it's intrusive thoughts. And as soon as I'll start to hear that machine gun and smell the carbon or the iron, I will immediately try to push that thought down. And it's all about avoidance and suppression. After time, you start to, you won't remember details of things, and your brain will actively block it out, but then it'll come out, and what you were trying to remember,
but your triggers all stay, right?
That night. Triggers stay.
Your triggers stay. So a lot of
they kind of the edges are kind of round off over time. Like, couldn't eat barbecue for years. Burning bodies smelled just like pork.
Yeah, it's weird.
Barbecue, and it made my mouth would water and I'd throw up. I couldn't touch it. Couldn't smell it. Couldn't be around it. I'd just get sick, and I had to leave. But that goes away, and it's little things like that. I couldn't drive for a long time because I would just, a cardboard box on the side of the road I would think was full of bombs, and I would just cut the wheel, and it takes a lot of adjustment.
So you were in the Rover program 30 days.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful program.
You say, was it an experimental thing, or was this?
No, it's an established program. It's the only one in the nation. Well, I think they have one more maybe in Michigan, but it's the top rated PTSD program in the country, and there's like a year waiting list. It's one of those things, dude. I'm Teflon, like right place, right time, and I got in. And I was technically homeless at that time, because when I went to Houston, that was like a last-ditch effort. Like, I got to check into the VA and get clean and try to do something.
But they probably didn't admit you on the same day you showed up, right?
Well, you go in through the ER, and, I told them that I was withdrawn from these heavy narcotics, and there's a potential for seizures, and you're a fall risk and stuff like that. So they admit you into the acute behavioral unit, which they do anywhere with that. Any type of thing like that deals with the mental issue, they're going to put you on the acute side of it at first, and then they move you. But the program is fantastic, and I still wasn't receiving my benefits at that time, and I was getting nervous because I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have any money, and I had filed, and I had gotten an advocate in the VA hospital because I could free roam the hospital, but I couldn't leave. It's 6 stories. This hospital is huge. I had everything. So I was able to get an advocate. I was able to find out all this information, and I went to the administration building every single day for 3 months and talked to the same people to where I ingrained myself on them, and found out that, if you
probably
claim
made them laugh
homeless
a lot.
status, yeah, they love me. And just, more research and reading, I found that they will expedite the process if you're homeless.
Yeah.
So how many years was this?
That
2012.
That you hadn't had your benefits.
That was 2012. Oh, since I haven't had them?
Well, you said
I got them in
you
2012,
applied.
and I still get the VA benefits. The SSI thing was 3 years after that, and I only had it for 2 years, and then they took it.
Yeah.
Why they would have a Middle Eastern doctor evaluate me, I don't understand. I froke out in the doctor's office. But it was so mechanical, and she never looked at me one time. She just asked questions off a piece of paper and was like, I got everything I need. And I knew right then. I don't know what it is.
So you said you had to claim homeless status to get it?
On the VA, to expedite the claim because the VA has like 2 million claims right now that they haven't even reviewed because it's a whole process.
They're underfunded and understaffed.
Right. And their percentages don't add up.
Right.
You know, it's really weird how the math works because I get 10% for tinnitus, but 100% for the PTSD. But, you know, it's at 100%, and the way they work the other percentages is really, really strange,
weird.
too. But they work it in a way to where you get the least amount of money.
Sure, I'm sure.
Always.
You know, there's a shanty town of homeless people behind our VA clinic, right?
Yeah.
They're veterans.
Yeah.
They have to stay there because
dude, it's because
one of them
this
gets
VA
sick, they gotta be
clinic
right there.
here is okay. So if I want to go get a pair of glasses, just a pair of glasses, I have to call the Beaumont VA, schedule an appointment. Since I haven't been in 2 years, I have to call, get a new primary care physician.
Where are your glasses? You ain't
They're at
wearing
the
them.
house.
All
I
right.
got contacts.
Oh, okay.
Get an appointment with primary care physician. Got to meet a new one. And they check you out. What's up? What you need? Need to get some glasses. Oh, I got to refer you to the Houston VA. You get your referral. You call them, talk to them. You get on the waiting list. 6 months later, you go to the Houston VA, have your eye exam. 6 months later, you go back and get your glasses.
That's
like it's ridiculous.
two
ridiculous.
trips. 2 trips to Houston is more expensive than just going and
Yeah, but your,
Well,
your
they
prescription
do.
would change.
Okay, so what they used to do, and this was actually pretty cool, they would calculate the distance from your address on your driver's license to the VA, and they would pay you, I think it was
mileage,
55,
yeah.
And you could go up to the window, show them your ID, and they give you cash to reimburse you for the drive. So that was cool. Because I was having to go every week, and I had to be there at 6 a.m. in Houston to take a UA to get 1 week's supply of Suboxone
yeah.
to get me through to the next week when I started.
You show up every day at 6 a.m.
No, every Tuesday.
Oh, every
I had to
Tuesday.
go,
Okay,
once
yeah.
a week.
A weekly
and see
UA.
him at
I
6
got you.
a.m. So that was a nightmare too.
Imagine.
But I was able to get my money, and I moved back home, and it didn't take like I got the money, and my brain immediately swapped back to that old thinking, and
For sure, yeah.
you know, I blew through the money on frivolous things.
Like party.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
you
a
know,
good bender
just
right
got
here,
all this
yeah.
money. Well, I bought that Audi A6
Yeah.
that I had for 2 weeks.
Damn.
That I got robbed at gunpoint.
Dang,
It still had
man.
paper plates on it. I got
like
robbed
an
at
A6.
gunpoint. It's gone.
Dang, man.
Buy money. See you later, Benjamin.
Ball hard, huh?
Oh.
Ball fast.
Well, you know, if you don't have a house, you don't need an Audi A6.
No, for sure, yes.
You get your
That's
place
just
to live
financial
first.
priorities, yeah.
Right.
But I was still immature, and
We
that was that
definitely-
old way of thinking, that
Yeah.
impulsive, irrational thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to grow up, and it's taken 10 years to transition, and the PTSD is still there. It never goes away. You know, I still check the doors 3 or 4 times before we go to bed. I still do a lot of vigilant things that I don't need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's your security
But you know,
minded,
it is-
right? Yeah.
It really is. When you look back on it, it's very bittersweet, and I regret nothing. I would absolutely 100% do it again in a heartbeat. But it is the most demanding thing you'll ever do. So when you do something like that, it's hard for you to have sympathy for someone who's complaining about, you know, their job, and they sit behind a computer, you know, and it's just it gives you the scope, and I don't know, it does make you feel very alone, like no one understands. And I was one person, and then I decided I didn't like that person. That was not a good dude. We wouldn't be friends probably. You wouldn't like me. I mean, I was a junkie. But I tried to do it every way possible, and every single time it led me back to the same place. And I finally had an epiphany and was like, just don't do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, my dad passing the way he did, that kind of sealed the deal with it. And when I had the power to break those tips off and flush those, I knew that I would not have to worry about that again.
That's awesome.
Because if any time I was going to do it, that's the time I was going to do it.
Yeah, you kind of saw your biggest hurdle that you've ever seen, right?
You know,
emotionally.
that was, I guess, you know, was his final lesson. I don't want that. I mean, he worked, and there's a lot to it, but you know, he made poor decisions and was impulsive, and that happens sometimes. He was a really, really smart guy, and intelligent people tend to be plagued with you know, addictive tendencies and things like that, because when you're an intelligent person, you can kind of take reality for a ride. You know, you can kind of manipulate your surroundings and stuff because you kind of got the upper hand, whereas everybody else is just kind of trying to scrape and sheep their way through.
Go through the motions, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a correlation. There's also a correlation of substance abuse and higher IQs too, so that's another thing.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, because, you know, you got Flowers for Algernon, you know, a simple mind contemplates simple problems. They don't, you know, ignorance is bliss. I can go for days. But they, you know, what you don't know,
You don't worry about what you don't know.
Exactly.
Right.
And intelligent people think about bigger problems.
They also make up their own problems too.
Exactly. Yeah. That's very true.
They also solve the made-up problems.
That's also true.
I'm glad you can come in here and talk about it. I guess that you being able to, I mean, I know it's not easy to talk about, but you being able to actually talk about these things and express yourself.
You know, there's some catharsis in it, man. This is the most depressed I've been in years. Like having the anniversary of my father's death on the 31st. Like, his birthday's in November. He died in January. So from November to January, I'm just kind of beside myself and kind of not the same person. And then with the dog attack on Halloween night, and that just kind of added to this time of the year. And it's been really hard, and the PTSD and the depression and the cluster B personality disorder and the antisocial, just, you know, all the stuff, dude. It compounds on itself, and it's been hard. I mean, you can tell, dude. I'm like,
Well,
165.
You've lost weight,
probably.
bro. Yeah,
I'm skinny.
you've lost about 15, something like that.
I mean, you're not losing control. You're
No, my.
you know, I mean, that's something.
I am self-destructive. Anything I do, I'm very introspective, and if somebody does wrong by me, I won't take it out on them. I'll take it out on myself and think that it's something that I did, and I don't know. I've carried this guilty conscience with me for years, and I don't know where it came from. But my personality changed completely. So I was, you know, talking to y'all about earlier I was, you know, look at me all the time and making everyone laugh and all that. And now I just tend to be a wallflower and just kind of observe more than engage and try to be the life of the party. And I used to be very personable and be able to talk to anyone and complete strangers, but now I have to.
A little more guarded.
I'm a little more guarded, and yeah, it takes a little bit for me to warm up. I gotta get a feel for you, you know.
You still have that. You still have that though, for the most part.
As soon as I think I know what'll make you laugh, or your style of comedy, your sense of humor, then I can usually hone it in. Pretty good about that.
Yeah, you said this is cathartic. I hope that our little podcast, our little interviews kind of helped you, right? I know it usually helps people to talk about stuff. And you've talked about this with me before, with other people, so you're not really...
Here and there. And I'm not real guarded about it. There is some stuff that I don't talk about. But no, it's good. People ask me, like, how do you play war games and stuff like that? And I said, you know, actually it helps me because I'm in control of that character in that game.
Yeah, for sure.
And it puts that action back in my hands instead of just this uncontrollable train.
Kind of lets you get it out too, right?
Get out my wiggles, you know. You gotta get the wiggles out.
Yeah, I for one just think it's extremely important for people to hear what you have to say.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's and everything that you have to say. So the first half of the show was your military career and how hard that is. and how unbelievably hard it is for somebody that can't experience things like that to really contemplate it, right? So you have to realize that. When I was in the military, Zach was in the military, so it's hard for us, but we try.
It's hard for even a jumping off point, and just in your mind's eye, what do you picture? Like,
right.
It's hard to fathom.
It's hard to know what you don't know.
Yeah, and usually too, when you imagine things, it's sight. You don't have the smells and the textures.
It's not such a visceral experience.
Right,
so
right.
You kind of, whenever you tell us things, we're experiencing it through you, but this is like fourth hand knowledge almost when you really think about it. And then just everything else, your experiences after you got out, right? Problems with addiction, PTSD, like it's very important for anybody that, all four people listening to this to try to understand it, because there's a lot of things that go on now today that just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. If somebody has a problem, we shouldn't punish them for their problem, I think. And I hate to harp on it, but it's really important to me.
I do think it depends on the individual, and I think it depends on the problem. Violent people, they need to be with other violent people.
Absolutely.
But non-violent drug offenders, all you're doing is ruining someone's life. That's a personal problem that they have, and if
you're definitely not helping them. If they're running their own life,
yeah. All you're doing is setting them up into a position to where all they can do is sell drugs to make that money, because they can't get a job making any money, because any place that hires that pays does a background check. It's just it's bad. And the deal with felons, I mean, they really do set them up for a revolving door policy.
Right.
They set them up to knock them down again.
Make it almost impossible to have any success.
And that's how probation is too. They want to squeeze the money out of you, and then they wait for a violation so they can send you anyway.
It's terrible. But all right, let's stop preaching.
Well, you want to keep going? You want to make it a little lighter, or?
I don't even know. I don't even know where to go. We can try, but
why don't we just call it? You got anything you want to promote? Positive things? You got something?
No, I would say. Whoops. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I did get sidetracked a little bit. What I was going to say, veterans that are out there that have issues, know that you're not alone, and that there are veterans all over the country that are having the same issues that you are, and there are people that you can talk to, and there's always going to be a day that's better. It can't stay bad forever, and it does get better, and there's never one day that's so bad that it has to end. And to keep your chin up and call somebody, talk to somebody, and let it be known, because people want to help, and that's the first question people ask when someone takes their life is why? Why didn't they just come to me and talk to me? And they always feel so alone. So don't be afraid to reach out and talk to people, and don't be embarrassed, and don't be afraid if you're having legitimate issues. Seek help for them, because you'll thank yourself in the long run for stepping up and making the hard choice and taking the high road. And other than that's it.
That's a really good place to end it. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
You have me back.
I know this is a pretty deep, heavy podcast, so if you've listened all the way through it, I'm proud of you. This has been A to Z, man. We'll see y'all next time.